This isn't an idea I haven't done before, or more should I say, I've used the concept of Naruto switching places with Minato and Minato switching places with Naruto, but I've never done them switching places with each other in real time. The concept is this: Naruto will become Minato and Minato will become Naruto. Naruto will try to keep things historical while Minato tries to do his best with the power he's given. It'll work on a linear timeline, meaning if Naruto changes anything in the past, the future will also change. So let's start this up and see what happens. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Hovering above a very particular house in Konoha was a man of dark skin and light-colored hair. His eyes gazed through circular glasses with a slight yellow tint to them. It was Fu. What's that? He's not a Naruto villain? Oh yes, you are correct, he's not. But ever since he's decided to see what the Naruto world would be like if Naruto and Sasuke fused, you should watch that video by the way, he's had nothing but an interest in this new world of shinobi. Looking through the window like a very scientific creep, he realized that this was the point in time where Minato was to be informed by his wife that he was to be a father. Oh, how sweet! This is very interesting indeed. I wonder if there's another way for me to change this. A slight shift in possibilities. Pulling out his time cutter, he pointed at Minato. Click! And that's another anchor dropped. He then cut through the very fabric of space and time and passed on through. On the other side, he found a separate area. And since there's no Supreme Kai protecting time here, I can do whatever I want and get away with it, he said to himself, going a little wild over his newly found freedom. This world might have been even better than his own world. He loved being able to do whatever he wanted without even so much as a peep from the time patrol. He was approximately 12 years in the future. At this point, the old house which the Hokage had lived in was empty and dilapidated, mostly wrecked from the Nine-Tails attack, never truly repaired. So, where's the bean burrito they were cooking in the oven? He would move off to Naruto's apartment where he would hover in the air outside of the window. Looking in, he saw the boy sleeping, sprawled out halfway out of the covers. Hello there, he said as he looked down at him, pulling out his time cutter once again. And click! That's the second anchor dropped. Now let's get back to the command center and see what we can do with this. Fu would then carve another portal through space-time that led to his laboratory. Going to the microwave, he grabbed some popcorn and a bottle of Hercule Cola before plopping down in his seat. He turned on two monitors. The one on the left showed Minato Namikaze, while the one on the right showed Naruto Uzumaki. He checked a few instruments. Everything's green. Let's begin the experiment! With the push of a button, an odd instance occurred. The screen then flashed the words, "Switcheroo in progress." As Kushina explained it all to him, suddenly a different light shined from Minato's eyes. What? What's this? He asked, looking down at himself. Minato, are you alright? Kushina asked. Minato? My name's Naruto, lady. Kushina was a bit surprised. No, that's the name of our baby. Naruto was confused as he looked at Kushina. Kushina was starting to get a little worried about Minato. I think you need some rest, baby. You've been working a bit too hard. She would take Minato, or who I will be referring to henceforth as Naruto, by the hand and take him to the bedroom where she would tuck him under the covers. Naruto was looking around. But I just got up. She would turn off the light. You sleep, Minato. I'll go finish my work. I'll be back later on tonight. Naruto laid there for a moment and began trying to understand what was going on. My name is Minato, he said as he looked at himself. Crawling out of bed, he walked to the mirror in the bathroom just off of the bedroom. I still kinda look like me, like this is probably what I would look like as a 20-ish-year-old guy, but who am I really? He continued to investigate the room. He saw pictures of himself, or Minato, and the woman who he just talked to. He continued investigating when he found his own ID, Minato Namikaze. He then tried to understand who the woman was and found her ID as well. Kushina Uzumaki? That's my last name. It then began to hit. Wait, she's pregnant with a baby named Naruto. What are the chances that they're having a baby who has my name? He was confused and getting nervous, about to pass out, so he lay back down in bed and turned on the TV to calm himself. The news was on. It was then that Naruto realized that the date on the TV was approximately 12 years behind what it was supposed to be. No way. Did I time travel back? Then that means I switched places with my father. Fu giggled as he watched. For such a dullard, he picked up on that pretty fast. Maybe he's not as dumb as he seems. Let's see what the other guy's doing. Naruto, or should I now say Minato, opened his eyes in Naruto's little apartment. What happened last night? He sat up and started thinking. Was that all just a dream? He wondered. Hey, Ku! Ku! He sat up, his feet dangling off the bed. She must have gone out to the store or something. He got up out of bed and stumbled for a second. He couldn't quite grasp what was different. His mind was way too groggy. He began making his way to the bathroom and got lost a couple of times in various different closets. What was I doing again? He asked as he walked into the closet. Man, I gotta pee. He turned around and began making his way to the bathroom for real this time. He took a deep breath, looked up at the ceiling, and relieved himself. As per his ritualistic instinct, if he had accidentally peed on the seat, he wiped it up with his socked foot before making his way to the sink to wash his hands. He opened his eyes and looked into his baby blues and messy golden hair with a smile. He dried his head and then stepped outside. He then put it in reverse and came back to the mirror. He looked in again. Why am I a kid again? He asked as he looked at himself. He was only just now noticing things. Wait, whose apartment is this? He stepped outside and noticed his pajamas. These aren't mine. His mind suddenly sharpened. Something's not right. He put his fingers up. I'm in a genjutsu. Release, he shouted. Nothing happened. This must be a powerful genjutsu. He decided that the only way to wake himself up was through pain, so he ran full force into the wall and knocked himself onto his back. Ow, son of a... He stood. All right, that must have not been enough. I gotta try again. He ran at the wall again, this time knocking his shoulder out of socket. Mama, he whimpered as he laid there. A few moments passed until he heard a buzz at the door. He went to open it to see Hiruzen there. Are you okay? Your neighbors reported a disturbance. Hiruzen, thank heavens you're here. Something weird is happening. Hiruzen then noticed the dents in the wall and the way that Minato was holding his arm. Are you okay? Hiruzen then made Minato show him his arm. Your shoulder's out of place. With a quick yank and an unholy crackle, his arm was back in socket. Yow! Minato shouted as he held his arm again. At least now he could move it well. Hiruzen looked into his eyes with compassion. Naruto, are you okay? Is this a cry for help? Are you doing self-harm to get attention? What? No, I'm just... Wait, did you say Naruto? Minato looked around the room and then down at himself. Hiruzen was nervous. Naruto? Minato pointed to himself. Me? I'm Naruto? Hiruzen began to sweat a bit. You must have given yourself a concussion. He then threw Naruto over his shoulder and made for the door. What are you doing? Put me down, Minato shouted. No, I'm taking you to the hospital. Something isn't right. I've got to make sure everything in your noggin is still working. He dragged Minato off to the hospital where Minato was forced to undergo a CAT scan and various other tests. Once he was cleared, he was allowed to leave, though Hiruzen really wanted him to stay. Minato returned to his apartment. This isn't where I live. Entering the abode once again, he looked at the mirror. This isn't my body. It's like my body was at this age, but it's different. Really different. Looking at his pajamas, he decided to change out of them and into something better. He went to his closet and saw row after row of the same offensively orange jumpsuit and a pair of sandals that smelled as bad as one might imagine. Grabbing the Lysol, he hoped it had enough oomph to it to kill whatever was making it smell that way. He then began to investigate. This isn't a genjutsu, so this must be some other kind of technique, but what? He started to overthink what Hiruzen said. He called me Naruto, not to mention, now that I think about it, he was a bit saggier than he was before, with a few more wrinkles. Minato began to wonder if everyone had experienced this. Was this some new world-altering genjutsu? Perhaps Tsukiyomi? There was no other explanation. He turned on the television to find that apparently 12 years had passed. The news anchors were not the same, save one or two who would grade a lot. The set was different as well. He began looking for more clues. He found a student ID for the academy. It said Uzumaki Naruto on it and stated that he was 12 years old, born ironically on the year that Minato knew it was before. He began to put the pieces together. Am I in the body of my own son? Fu was laughing. How backwards. Minato's smarter than Naruto, and yet he wasn't as quick to pick up on this. How odd. He then looked back to Naruto. What are you up to? All things considered, Naruto went back to sleep. When the lights were turned out, considering he'd been sleeping moments earlier, he decided to try and sleep again. For all Naruto knew, he'd just been in a dream and needed to wake up. But when he woke the next morning, he was still in this body. Okay, so it wasn't a dream. It was for real. So what could the explanation be? Time travel? Maybe this is like Freaky Friday, except I didn't get into a fight with my dad. I don't even know my dad. Maybe that's why? He then looked out the window and only saw 3 faces on the mountain. Wait, there's supposed to be one more up there beside Grandpa Hiruzen. Who was that guy again? He thinks for a second. Must not be important. He walks away. He would then head downstairs where Kushina was cooking breakfast. She looked back and saw him. Oh yeah, this must be my mom, he said. She walks over to Naruto and wraps her arms around his shoulders. Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well? As awkwardly as you would guess, Naruto answers, yes, indeed. I did indeed sleep good. Kushina smiled. Fantastic. She pushed her head forward to kiss him, but Naruto's head is pulling back with every inch she grows closer until eventually he breaks away. She's a little confused by this. Minato, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Everything's good. How are you? Inside his own head, Naruto's doing a facepalm. Kushina steps back toward the stove, looking over her shoulder only once with a sort of awkward smile. Naruto sits down at the table and picked up a newspaper. Oh yeah, old people read these. Maybe I should too, just to keep playing the part until I figure out how to undo this. Naruto begins to read. Oh, the Third Shinobi World War's happening. I forgot about that. Wait, does that mean I have to fight? I'm barely trained enough to do anything. I'll get myself killed. He seems suddenly worried. What will happen to me if I mess up this timeline? Would I just never exist? He looks over at Kushina. She's pregnant with me now, so surely I'm still going to exist. I hope. Kushina then brought him some breakfast. So, are you sure you can't push off the mission just a little bit longer? She asked. Mission? Naruto asked. Which one? Oh, Kanabi Bridge. You're still doing that, aren't you? She asked. Naruto sat there in silence for a moment. I'll have to check in with the Hokage, who is... He was trying to bait her into finishing his sentence. She did not take the bait, so he just said it again. The Hokage, who is... When she failed to answer a second time, he just came out with it. Who's the current Hokage? Kushina was surprised. It's Hiruzen. You're telling me you don't remember? She stood and walked over to check his head for a fever. Baby, I feel like there's something wrong. You need to go to the hospital. No, I'm fine. Don't worry. Kushina seemed upset. I don't want you to be having a stroke. I'm pregnant. I can't do this without you. She began to cry. I'm not having a stroke, he said. Yes, you are, she whined. You don't remember your own name. You don't know who the Hokage is. You're having a stroke or something and you're dying. Naruto shook his head. Fine. I'll go to the hospital. Would that make you stop crying? She sucked it up immediately and sat down with a smile before taking up his newspaper. Naruto shook his head. Dang. He went to the door. I'll see you later then. He went to the hospital to have his head checked out. Was there the possibility that he really was Minato and just having some sort of psychotic breakdown and believing he was Naruto? No, there was no way. He couldn't just let himself be gaslit into thinking there was something wrong. He was released with a clean bill of health after a once-over. He decided that the best thing he could do was go to Hiruzen himself. What should I say, he asked. I'll just roll with it. He walked to the Hokage's office where he knocked on the door. Hiruzen called him in. Ah, Minato. What's going on? Is there something you needed? Naruto nodded. Yeah. I need you to help catch me back up to speed on some stuff. Why is that? Hiruzen asked. Naruto thought about it. I hit my head really hard a couple days ago while training, and I only just today went to the hospital because I can't remember anything. I have amnesia. Hiruzen was shocked. Oh no, are you sure you're okay? Do you need to sit? Naruto shook his head. No, I'm fine. I just went to the doctor and they gave me a clean bill of health except for the amnesia. I need you to tell me everything I need to do, and also I need you to teach me all the skills I once had and the knowledge I need to survive on the battlefield. Hiruzen looked on silently for a moment before bursting into laughter. Naruto started laughing as well. You always were hilarious, Minato, but seriously, did you hurt yourself? Naruto nodded. I did hurt myself, and my amnesia is real. I just need some help getting back up to speed. Hiruzen nodded. Well, getting you back to work might do you some good. It might remind you of all the things you forgot. Let's start with your upcoming mission. You'll be heading out to Kusagakure to destroy a bridge known as Kanabi Bridge. This bridge is an important supply line for Iwagakure. You'll be taking out your 3 pupils, Kakashi, Rin, and Obito. It's your mission to destroy it. Naruto nodded. And where is this bridge again? Hiruzen's smile faded. Are you sure you're okay? Naruto nodded. I'm great, I'm just a little confused. Hiruzen sat forward. You know, your squad is made up of Chunin, with Kakashi even being Jonin. If required, he can lead the mission while you just stay in the village. I can go, Naruto said. I'm just going to require some help, like knowing what to do. Hiruzen sat back in his chair. I can make Kakashi the lead if you want. Naruto nodded. That would be preferable. Fu watched on. Let's see how Mini Minato is doing. Minato was in the academy. He showed up to school only to realize that there was planned to be a test to see whether or not the students were ready to become genin. Surely my son is studied. I bet he's a great shinobi. I think I'll just make sure he passes. So when it was his turn, Minato didn't just make a clone, he made 3, and they were all shadow clones that could be felt. Minato was passed on the spot. He would receive a headband as the rest of the kids did and would be told to meet them there the day after next to be put onto a team. As Minato spent his free day alone, he decided to try and get caught up on world events. He went to the library to look for important world events since the time he recalled. He took a book out of the library about world history and began to examine it. He looked first through Konoha. He learned of the end of the war, the Nine-Tails attack, the Hyuga affair, and the subsequent downfall of the Uchiha. He was shocked that so much bad stuff had happened during his time. But what really freaked him out was that it said that he, or the real he that everyone knew him as Minato Namikaze, perished 12 years earlier on October 10th, killed by the Nine-Tails after having helped reseal it away. I died, he said with a bit of cold sweat. He sat back down and began to ponder these things. The Uchiha were blamed for this all happening and attempted a coup led by Fugaku. Minato was blown away. Fugaku was the most staunch supporter of Konoha among the entire Leaf. There was no way he would consent to something like that. He then read that it was Fugaku's own son who destroyed the Uchiha. I can't believe it. Itachi. He was a pacifist. What kind of twisted future is this? Minato looked down. If I'm in Naruto's body, then does that mean that Naruto's in mine? Is he in the past changing things? Would a few changes really do all this? I feel like he'd have to screw up royally to get this to happen. He looked up and shouted, Naruto, you better not be screwing anything up. Suddenly, Naruto seemed to react as he sat in Hiruzen's office. Fu sat forward. Wait, did Naruto actually hear that? He paid attention to Naruto's screen. I'm not screwing anything up. Fu almost spilled his popcorn. He did hear it. Not screw what up, Hiruzen asked. Naruto shook his head. Sorry, I was talking to myself. I was afraid that I might screw stuff up if I wasn't careful, but I told myself I wouldn't. Hiruzen was growing more and more concerned. I don't think you should go on this mission, Minato. Naruto shook his head. No, I can do it. I'm fine. I just need to jog my memory a little. All the while Naruto was talking, Fu was checking his instruments and papers. I have never seen this before. Their minds are linked beyond even space and time. It's like, despite being separated from his body, Minato still has a connection with it, and the same with Naruto. Does this mean that the two of them can communicate? How interesting. Naruto would return home and try to push the story to Kushina as an explanation. Baby, you hit your head, you didn't tell me. Why not? It's dangerous hiding that kind of thing from me. What if you died? Naruto looked down in shame, not because he didn't tell her he hit his head, because he didn't, but because he was telling a bald-faced lie to his own mother. The shame was real. The reason, though, was different, but he knew it would be better this way. I'm sorry, I just didn't want to alarm anyone, but now that I can't remember anything, it's becoming an issue. I'm slowly jogging my memory, but the doctor said it could be a long time before I remember everything, if ever. Kushina came to him in an attempt to offer him a kiss for comfort, but Naruto turned to the side to offer his jaw, which she found suspect but didn't say anything. She kissed his cheek. It'll be okay. I'll help you remember. I'll take it personally to go over our whole life story with you if I have to. Good. Can we do that after I get back from the mission? Naruto asked. What mission? Kushina asked. She was surprised. You're still going on the Kanami Bridge mission? With amnesia? Are you insane? Naruto shook his head. No, I have to do this. My team's being called up and I can't let them just do this alone. Despite her protests, she relented, knowing that Minato had a duty. Just be safe. Getting out to the field, Naruto would meet up with his team and prepare to perform the mission. While he was doing this though, he was informed of a good few shinobi being pinned down. Despite this, Naruto didn't see how he could realistically help, not to mention that he was already on another mission. He considered going to help, but what could he do? He wasn't equipped to take down anyone like that, so he forwarded it to the nearest leader, that being Fugaku, who said he would go and help out the stranded shinobi. Naruto and the others would then begin preparations to do their mission. Naruto followed after the team. For the most part, his presence there hadn't slowed them down much, and he was getting the hang of it. His father had seemingly trained so much that his body was trained to think on its own, meaning that if Naruto let his mind go in the heat of battle, he found he was capable of doing ninjutsu he'd never studied before. All of it being muscle memory. He was starting to pick things up, but it felt like he was learning more about these techniques as time passed. However, they were eventually stopped by Iwanin, who would take Rin hostage. Obito and Kakashi would debate on whether or not they should go back to her, with Kakashi stating that they shouldn't. That wasn't going to fly with Naruto. Naruto decided that they should go back. Considering that Minato had senior authority over Kakashi, Kakashi had no choice but to listen, so the three of them fled after her, eventually finding her in a cave. On the outside, Kakashi ended up losing an eye in a battle trying to save Obito, an event that awakened Obito's Sharingan. In the end, Obito managed to kill their assailant. Naruto checked up on Kakashi. "Man, looks like that peeper's totaled," he said, unable to properly word it for Kakashi's sake. And together they made their way to the cave where they managed to drive off the final Iwanin. But in revenge, he decides to bring the whole place down. In a moment of panic, Naruto's instincts kick in. He grabs the two closest to him, that being Rin and Obito, and uses the speed of the yellow flash to get him out of the cave. He then realizes that Kakashi's still in there. He runs to the mouth of the cave and sees Kakashi running as fast as he can. "Run, Kakashi!" he shouts. Kakashi's moving as fast as his legs will carry him. He's a lightning release user, so he decides to attempt the Chidori, but before he can, he's smashed in the side of the head by a rock. Naruto goes to enter the cave to grab him, but before he can, the cave collapses. Naruto is flung back. "Kakashi!" He approaches the cave again, as do Obito and Rin. They start digging through the rubble. As they do so, they eventually find Kakashi's body there. "Kakashi!" Obito shouts. Kakashi lays there, blinded, and the only eye that remains exposed, his other likely crushed under the stone. "Kakashi, can you hear us?" Naruto asks. Kakashi groans and speaks weakly. "Minato-sensei." "I'm here," Naruto says. Kakashi reaches out for his hand. "I don't want to die," he says. Naruto was unable to formulate anything to say. "You'll be okay." For a moment, Kakashi was silent. He then spoke. "Dad." His hand then fell to the side. "Kakashi!" Obito shouted. He gripped his head. "If it hadn't been for me, he wouldn't have been blinded in that eye. Then he would have been struck by that rock. He could have escaped." Naruto looked at Obito, and suddenly Obito looked up and showed his Mangekyo Sharingan. In that moment, they were surrounded by shinobi on all sides. Obito stood and saw them. In his anger, he let out a ferocious battle cry, a sound Naruto wasn't aware a child like him could even make. He dashed forward to strike his opponents, passing through their blades with Kamui before striking them with his own, stabbing them in the heart. And as he was approached from behind, the arm of an incomplete Susanoo appeared and smashed them. Naruto watched as Obito's tears turned to blood, and the ground was stained in the bile and internal fluids of all his enemies. All Naruto could do was shield Rin's eyes, hugging her close. Obito managed to single-handedly kill all the shinobi by himself. He would then pass out. Naruto would take the remains of his squad to safety and let them rest. Despite how hard it was, they did manage to finish their mission. Fu then turned his attention back to Minato. "Wow, he saved that Uchiha kid instead of the one-eyed kid. I wonder what that'll do." Minato would head to the office and take a seat. There he saw Sakura and Sasuke. Looking at Sasuke, he knew that he was the last Uchiha alive besides Itachi. Such a shame, considering that Fugaku was what Minato would consider his best friend. The two always went out for drinks. Heck, Fugaku was his best man at his wedding. As bad as this future was, Minato was at least glad that he could be there for Sasuke. He sat down, taking his seat. He waited for the Jonin that had been assigned to his team to show up. Whoever they were fashionably late, if being late could be considered fashionable. But as he was about to get angry enough to lodge a complaint to the Hokage, he saw a hand wearing fingerless gloves grip the door and open it. A man walked in. "Hello, I'm your new Jonin. My name is Obito Uchiha." Minato was confused. "Wait, Uchiha? You're an Uchiha too?" Obito nodded. "Yes?" Minato then looked back. "I thought that Sasuke and Itachi were the last Uchiha left alive after the massacre." Obito shook his head. "Far from it. There are a lot of Uchiha left. The massacre wasn't that bad. I personally killed Itachi. My apologies, by the way, Sasuke." Sasuke nodded. "My brother walked his own path, and he had to deal with the consequences." Minato was confused. He then pulled out the history book again and sought out the chapter about the Uchiha downfall, only to see that it had been replaced with the Midnight Massacre, an event in which Itachi Uchiha attempted to destroy the Uchiha all by himself but failed, resulting in his death at the hands of Obito, who would go on to become a hero of the Leaf after he stopped such an uprising from occurring. Something in the past has changed. Something important, Minato thought. Let's hope this doesn't change everything for the worse. Fu came back with a second bag of popcorn and some M&Ms. He hit the play button on his remote to continue the experiment. Minato was sitting down outside of the academy on the rooftop of a building as Obito tried to get to know his team better. Obito sat before them, his legs crossed. He didn't want to stand above them, no. He wanted them to feel as if they were equals. Even though he was their superior, he acknowledged their potential if they followed his instructions. Tell me about yourself. And I don't just mean the same template you give when meeting a new person. I mean, tell me who you really are. Your dreams, your aspirations, why you think the way you do. What you want out of life and why. Sasuke, go. Sasuke was thrown on the spot. Well, I want to be the head of the military police. Obito nodded. Oh, interesting. What made you decide to set that as your goal? Sasuke thought about it. Honestly, you have a lot to do with it. This surprised Obito. Me? Sasuke nodded. You were the Uchiha's defense when my brother attempted to destroy everything. I came to realize how important peacekeepers are. Those who protect Konoha from the inside are as important as those who defend it from the outside. It made me sad that my brother made this decision to throw away everyone, myself included. I loved him with everything I had and he sought to destroy me, but it made me desire to protect Konoha more, from all threats, foreign and domestic, to value justice and the lives it's designed to serve. Obito smiled softly. That's a great dream. But what about you, Sakura-chan? Surely you have a dream and a goal. Sakura looked over at Sasuke, then away with a hint of a blush. Obito smiled. Oh, trying to impress someone, I take it. She looked up. It's not a very good reason. Obito shook his head as he approached her. Love is perhaps one of the best reasons. All shinobi work through love. All the best ones anyway. But there are many types of love, and a lot of people a shinobi is required to love. Sometimes balance can be hard. Trust me, I was the same as you at one point. How did that turn out? Sakura asked. Obito smiled. It turned out pretty good for me, but there was a time when I almost had to sacrifice her for the entire village. And despite how hard that was, I would've, because the life of a shinobi isn't about oneself. It's about others. Does that make sense? Sakura nodded. He then moved to Minato. Naruto Uzumaki. I'm very interested to hear what your goals and reasoning are, so lay it on me. What do you want out of your life? Minato sat there. He had no clue why Naruto had decided to become a shinobi. Looking over at the stone face, he recognized himself. Surely Naruto knew who his parents were, right? Obito followed his gaze. The Hokage? Minato looked back. He decided to roll with it and nodded. So you want to be Hokage. That's a pretty common dream. But it's no less unique, because for as many people as there are who wish to be Hokage, there's an equal number of reasons. Why do you want to be Hokage? Naruto spoke. My father. He was Hokage. I want to be like he was. Make him proud of me, so he can look down upon me from heaven and smile. Obito smiled. Your father was an amazing man. He was my hero of a sort. He was so kind and patient with me. I was a lot of trouble for him when I was training. My rivalry with Kakashi probably drove him mad, but he would always smile. I was often invited over to his house for dinner. He was like the father I never really had. Minato at this point was starting to bubble up with tears. Obito noticed. Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto. I didn't mean to make you cry. I know your life has been tough without him. You know that I personally requested to have you on my team so I could show your father to you. I know you can't meet him now, but I'm going to tell you as many stories as you desire, in hopes that you can know him and Miss Kushina the same way that I did. Minato didn't need to learn who he had once been. He already knew who he was, but the fact that Obito loved and cherished him so much, and even took it into his hands to be a guiding light to his son, it was overwhelming. I love you, Obito, he said, and for a moment Obito thought he heard Minato's voice inside of Naruto's. Obito almost started to cry over this and hugged him back. To this, Sasuke and Sakura were smiling. Obito, a moment later, rose to his feet. Alright guys, time to take you to perform a rite of passage. It's something my master did for me and my team when we first came together, and his master did the same for him. This tradition is as old as Konoha itself. He led the trio out into the forest a ways away where he spoke of the bells and the bell test. Obito smiled. In many cases, the group was always told that whoever didn't get a bell at the end would be sent back to the academy, but I'm not gonna tell you that. Instead, I'm going to be transparent with you and explain the test's meaning. That being said, this is technically no longer a test because of this, but more of an exercise in teamwork. He raised the bells. These bells represent a lot. They represent the mission, but they also represent sacrifice. As you can see, there are only 2 bells instead of 3. By the end of today, those with a bell will get a special treat, and the one without will get none. He or she will be forced to watch their team enjoy something nice and get none themselves. That's the sacrifice. To sacrifice for the team, Sasuke asked. Obito smiled. For the whole village. That's the final thing these bells represent, and the most important. These bells represent the will of fire. The only way you can get them is if you work together against me. But by working together, you must realize that you won't get a prize. You'll have to decide who to sacrifice. Because I know from experience that sometimes, on mission, not everyone comes home. And as a shinobi, you have to be ready to accept that. Accept that you might not come home, or that someone you love won't be. The air grew thick. Despite this, Minato was so proud of Obito. He had truly learned the core meaning of this test, and now he was putting it to good use, properly explaining it to his team. Now, Obito said, "Come at me." The group rushed at him. Fu smiled. "What a nice concept. So sweet, so cheesy. I can make everyone come home if I wanted. He who controls time also controls space, and he who controls time and space controls all of fate. He turned over and looked at Naruto and Minato's body. Maybe that's just what we need here. Certainly would make things more exciting. Naruto would return to Konoha with Obito and Rin. They were debriefed by Hiruzen each, but the one who had to give the longest account was Naruto, as he was active commanding officer of that mission. And then it all collapsed, and Kakashi perished. Obito had to do things that... I lost control. I couldn't control him. I was focused on protecting Rin. Hiruzen looked down. How are they taking this? Naruto shook his head. I haven't heard anyone speak a single word that wasn't objective related. Hiruzen took a second and then put his hand on Naruto's. How are you doing with this? Naruto looked up. I feel like they were counting on me, and I failed them. Hiruzen then spoke. As a Jonin and as leader of a squad, we sometimes feel responsible for everything that happens to our team. Trust me, I know what it's like to watch your team fall apart, to lose a trusted member. You can't blame yourself. You're not God. Naruto looked up. They went out trusting I'd bring them home, and I failed them. I wasn't ready for this, and I pushed myself. Hiruzen shook his head. No, they went out knowing full well that they might not come back alive. They were prepared to pay the cost. Naruto shook his head. I won't let this happen again. Minato. Naruto stood up. No, I'm serious. I won't let this happen again. I swear it on Kakashi's grave. Not a single one of my students will ever die on the battlefield again. Naruto turned around and left the room, leaving Hiruzen alone with his thoughts. Minato returned home to Kushina, who'd be there to greet him. I heard what happened, she said as she kissed his cheek. It wasn't your fault. Naruto just shook his head and walked in. He went to the fridge. Kushina followed him from behind and watched as he pulled out a carton of milk and popped the cap to drink from it. I hate it, he said. Kushina was left questioning. However, before she could ask, he continued. I hate it when people tell other people it wasn't your fault. The blame has to go somewhere, and whether I was in total control of the situation or not, those children are my responsibility. One of them didn't come home, and that's on me. You can't say that about yourself, Minato. If you do, you'll drive yourself insane. Naruto turned around. I just realized today that I have nobody to deliver Kakashi's headband to. There's nobody to miss him. Kushina nodded. His father was a single parent. He killed himself when Kakashi was still small. I'll never forgive that, Naruto said. Regardless of what everyone else thought, Kakashi still needed him, and he threw him away. Sold his life for honor Kakashi never needed. Kakashi had his own honor. Kushina stepped forward. Minato, calm down. You're grieving. You're in anger right now, but it's a pendulum. You will swing back. She took his hand and put it on her belly. Remember that another life will soon be depending on you. I know you want to think about Kakashi, but push it from your mind. It's not disrespectful not to think about him. It's just too painful now. Think of him when you're emotionally capable. For now, think about our family, our baby and his future. Naruto grit his teeth. Our baby will grow up an orphan. His father and mother will die in an attack and not a damn person will care. They'll hate him even. He'll regret being born. That's what he'll experience. Kushina was shocked. Minato, that's your pain talking. Our baby won't grow up as an orphan. Yes, he will, Naruto shouted. He'll never know his parents and be left wondering why the world is so cruel. He'll only suffer more and more. There'll be no happiness for him because the same world that kills Kakashi will try and kill him too. Kushina took a step back. The volume of his voice startled her. You don't know that, Minato. I do know it because I'm that baby. Some freaking soul switch across space and time. I'm Naruto. Minato's gone, and I know my history. Kushina took a couple steps back. In her head, she began to think he'd lost his mind. Minato would take another swig of the milk as Kushina continued to create distance between them. He looked over at her. What, do I scare you? He shook his head and took another sip. I'm not scared of you, Minato. I'm scared for you. That's not what your feet are saying, he said. He put the milk up and made his way outside. He walked the streets of Konoha. Thinking about the future, he began to realize that he flubbed by telling her that he was their child. Only one of two things could happen now. Either she would believe him, or she wouldn't. If she believed him, he would have just altered the future and caused a massive change. Or she wouldn't believe him and he'd be labeled insane. If that was true, well, that was the end of everything. And so he would walk the streets quietly and come to rest on a bench near the park. He would look over the water of the river and sigh. How long did he sit there? An hour? Maybe more? Who knew for certain? But as he did, something caught his eye. Looking to the side, he noticed someone coming in his direction. It was Kushina. She walked up to him. "Minato, can I sit?" He nodded. She took a seat beside him on the bench. Her hand covered his and clasped his fingers to hers. "Minato, I know you're stressed. With everything going on in the war, and with the baby on the way, and now the passing of Kakashi, I want to tell you that it's gonna be okay," she said. "You always go beyond the call of duty in everything, and you do so with a smile. Some people forget that you're still human. I think you forget that sometimes too. And maybe what I think happened today was all of that mixed with your mind struggling against mortality caused you to snap." "So you think I'm crazy?" Naruto asked. Kushina shook her head. "I think you're tired. I mean, unless you have some proof, then I'll just jump on board with you, but you've been acting strange for a long while. I think you're just overclocked. I think you need some time to rest." "I don't think time is something I have, Kushina." "Then Hiruzen will make you some. You act like the whole world is on your shoulders." "It is," he said. Kushina laid her head on his shoulder. "Perhaps it is. Perhaps everything you told me is right, and you really are our baby somehow, from the future. I can't say for certain, but I will say this. By straining yourself, you'll fail more than you accomplish. Simply accept that things are out of your control, and if things change because you're not perfect, then that's okay. Maybe they were always meant to change." She kissed his hand. "Just promise me that while you try your best, you won't take yourself so seriously. Let tomorrow worry about itself. Sufficient for the day are the evils thereof." Naruto nodded. "I'll try." She helped him stand. "Let's go home. I'm gonna have Hiruzen extend your leave. We're going on vacation." And that's exactly what happened. Now, as all this was going down, Rin would be captured by the mist, or so she believed. In essence, she had the three tails sealed inside of her. She would escape with the help of Obito, who at this time had become a fairly capable shinobi in his own right, nearly ready to become a Jonin. But as they were escaping, she kept trying to put herself in danger or be killed. Obito would shake her. "What's wrong with you? Do you truly wish to die?" She began to explain to him the situation. Using his abilities he'd developed over this time, including his recent studies of sealing techniques, he would place a second seal on her before utilizing his Kamui to reach into her chest and touch her heart, where he'd remove the seal safely himself. This preserved her life and allowed for her to remain without being a threat to Konoha. It was from this moment where Obito truly touched her heart, literally, tears of blood spilled to save her life, that she truly began to understand how much Obito meant to her. The two shared their first kiss on this battlefield, and as they returned home, Rin and Obito were hailed as heroes for bringing the Three Tails back with them, severely crippling the power of Kirigakure, who had lost their most valuable asset with no gain, having it turned against them. As the war raged on, it seemed to be slowly drawing to a close in Konoha's favor, but instead of completely finishing the war, instead Hiruzen attempted to bring peace by an armistice. Konoha gained nothing from this war, only the loss of life. This left Konoha's citizens very uneasy with the current leadership. The voices cried for a new Hokage. It was then that Minato would be chosen for Hokage, and by Minato, I mean Naruto. He was unsure about his ability to properly fulfill the role, but at the same time, Naruto had craved to be Hokage his entire life, so to be able to have that chance to do it, he couldn't help but try and take it. And so, as the face was put upon the rock, Naruto sat back at his desk. He would come to realize just how much was required of him to do, and there was a big issue. He was still just a 12-year-old in spirit, meaning he had no clue what these thousands and thousands of pieces of paper even meant, let alone what to do with them. This put Konoha into a sort of secret crisis, in which Hiruzen, though retired, returned to the office as an assistant to help Minato understand all this paper. To a point, Minato even allowed Hiruzen to make executive decisions for him until he could figure it out. Hiruzen was starting to regret his decision of not choosing Fugaku. At least with his Sharingan, Fugaku could speed read. Minato seemed barely even able to read. This caused Naruto to rethink his life goals. Should he ever return to his own body in time, he might rethink his desire to be Hokage. As the months passed though, Kushina would eventually reach the point where she was ready to give birth. They would take her to a secret location where only they knew, or so they believed. Do you think we here at the Amagi would ever let Kushina give birth without some form of issue? No way! And as she's laying there on the table getting ready to give birth, Naruto cannot bring himself to look at anything. They tell him that he needs to keep the seal closed, but because he's not in any condition to do that, they have to rely on a specialist instead. He doesn't really like the idea of being present and viewing his own birth at the time of it occurring. Kushina screams as she pushes with all of her might. Naruto simply offers her his hand. Eventually, the tiny cries of brand new life echo out. Despite his desire not to pay attention, he can't help but look back immediately. He stands and walks over to see the baby, but as he catches only a glimpse, they walk right past him to Kushina, handing it to her. Naruto looks down at it and sees how closely Kushina is hugging the child, and he nearly breaks down to tears. Well, not nearly, he does. He breaks down into tears. For so long, he had never felt any form of true affection. No love. He'd always been hated. And even though he was now in another body, he still hadn't felt it. After all, the person everyone loved was Minato, not the Naruto inside of him. But right now, he was looking at his mother hugging him, loving him, crying over the beauty of birth. She was happy he was alive, and despite the fact that the future likely had changed quite a bit, Naruto was sure that if anything in his past remained the same, it had to have been this. As Naruto walked over and knelt down to get a closer look, he could only imagine how Minato had reacted to this situation as well. Maybe it wasn't so bad that he switched bodies. Maybe he'd been forced to switch bodies simply to see this moment here and now. As Fu watched this, he wiped a tear from his eye and blew his nose into a handkerchief. Shows like this always make me cry. He then grabbed the remote control and began fast-forwarding it. We need action, now! As the heartfelt moment was still ensuing, suddenly it felt like everything had changed. In but a moment, a new person appeared. A man in a mask, and in his hands was Naruto. Kushina reached out to her baby, begging for it back, but the man in the mask refused. He demanded instead Kushina. From behind his mask, a crimson Sharingan loomed, floating in the darkness. Naruto, seeing himself in danger, knew that if at this moment this person killed that baby, that he too might die, as they were one and the same. When the man in the mask threw the baby into the air, Naruto's muscle memory caused him to move so quickly that he wasn't sure he could even do the things he was doing. Looking back, he saw that Kushina was gone. Looking his miniature self over for any wounds, he was terrified to see explosive tags. Freaking out, he ripped the blanket off and suddenly, on instinct, utilized the flying Raijin Jutsu to get back to their secret home. He placed his little self in the bed and covered his little body to keep him warm. Naruto stood there and thought about what he had just done. How horrible. He had chosen himself over his mother. He had to rescue her. He began to wonder, though, if he could use his flying Raijin Jutsu again. He tried to remember the sensation and locate Kushina. Finding her, he would then teleport to her, only to find that she was weak and alone. He cut her free. Kushina, are you okay? She looked up. Minato. The Ninetales. She pointed to the village. Naruto was in total awe of this monster. His entire body shook as he looked at it. He then looked back at Kushina and used the flying Raijin to teleport her back to their house. He laid her down and looked at them both, himself and his mother. He realized that this was the day they would both die, and that outside was the beast that would kill him. But if he did nothing, the village would be destroyed. He couldn't let that happen. Even if he wasn't really Minato, he was the Hokage. He needed to save as many people as possible. Standing, he walked over and put on the Haori of the 4th Hokage. Minato, where are you going? Naruto looked back. To fulfill my destiny. Stepping outside, he was met with someone he didn't know. A masked man stood there, a tiger-striped mask covering his face, with only a single hole on the mask's left side, exposing his left eye. He wore a dark cloak, contrasting against the long, unruly white hair behind his head. His Sharingan turned. 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze. Today is the day you die. Naruto put a kunai in his mouth as he pulled out many others. He tossed them in every direction before gripping the one he had left tightly in his right hand. I know I will, but not to you. The man displayed a short katana. Together their weapons clashed. They clanged off of each other as their wielders were pushed back. The two began to circle each other. The masked man would make distance before throwing his blade. The blade whizzed past Naruto and embedded itself in the tree behind him. While Naruto was distracted, the man lowered his stance, gripped his hand, and let electricity flow through. He rushed forward with a Chidori in an attempt to strike Naruto, but Naruto dodged it with flying Raijin before rushing up behind the man and stabbing him in the back. The man gripped the tree before seemingly fading into it. he would appear from a limb, his body bleeding. "This isn't over," he said as he faded away. Naruto watched this and then made his way to the village. There he witnessed the Nine Tails facing off against the Three Tails, the latter under the control of Rin Nohara. While the beast was distracted, Naruto raced to it and gripped it before teleporting himself and the beast to their house. It was in this moment that Naruto realized why he was so hated. The nine-tailed fox had destroyed the village, and chances were it was sealed into him. That's why he was treated like a threat, and it meant that he would have to give his life to save the village. As he prepared though, Kushina stepped out. Naruto had a moment to speak with her. She looked at him and the fox as Naruto prepared the sealing ritual. He put the baby on the cushion, well out of the Nine-Tails' line of sight. "Are you planning to seal it into our baby?" she asked. Naruto looked back at her. "Yes." Kushina thought about it as she sat down on her knees. "The only technique you know, though, is the Reaper Death Seal." Truth be known, in Naruto's studies, he had come across it. He'd been trying to get in touch with his past abilities, so he had Kushina reteach it, and it indeed was what he was planning to use. She then spoke. "You are Naruto, aren't you?" Naruto stopped. He then looked back. Kushina spoke. "You said that our baby would grow up without parents, as a hated orphan. This night. This is why, isn't it?" Naruto turned to her and nodded. "Yes, it is. I surmised that the Nine-Tails was put into me as a baby, which is why I was hated. And it's likely because my father used the Reaper Death Seal. And without the Nine-Tails, you died, leaving me orphaned." Kushina hugged him. "Naruto, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You were telling the truth, and I completely disbelieved you." She looked at him. "This is why you've been struggling under Minato's work. You're not Minato." She thought back on everything. "Naruto, how old are you right now?" Naruto looked back at himself and then up to the moon. "Today is my 13th birthday." Kushina nearly fell to tears. "You've been through so much." She kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry we weren't there for you, Naruto, but I want to change that. Let me seal the Nine-Tails into myself. I'll take it with me to the grave." Naruto looked at her. "I don't know that you can. The Nine-Tails is important to Konoha." Kushina nodded. "But it will regenerate, and until it does, we have Rin. Please, Naruto. Minato and I failed you. Konoha failed you as well. We pushed something on you and likely expected Konoha to revere you, but instead, they abused you. I won't make you go through that again, nor will I allow you to die here. Let me do this as a last gift from the first person ever to know how much you're worth." Naruto was speechless. Tears formed in his eyes. Kushina kissed his cheek again. "I love you, Naruto." She pulled back. She stood and turned around. Walking out into the open, she suddenly called out to the beast. The Nine-Tails turned around and looked at her. It stabbed her through with its nail out of pure spite for what she had done to it. Holding its claw, though, Kushina smiled. It had just sealed its own fate. She then proceeded to seal it into herself once again before falling to the ground. Naruto ran over. He held her up as she bled out. "Mom!" Kushina looked at him. "Naruto, take good care of yourself. Raise yourself the way you wish you had been and make good memories. Know that wherever you are, whenever you are, no matter what body you're in, I will always love you, forever." She then passed away. In that very moment, Naruto's emotions burst out in a scream. It was as if his very scream were destroying the fabric of reality. Something was happening, something very big. Fu sat forward in his chair, spitting his root beer out. Alarms were blaring. "Crap! That was a nexus! That was a pillar of time! Without it, the whole damn timeline's going down!" He got up and ran to his instrument, beginning to turn the dials. "I need to quickly bleed it." Fu knew that too much was changing all at once, and since the future was reacting in real time to what was happening, it was starting to have complications. The universe was telling two stories, one part from the start and another part from the end. The middle had not yet been divulged, and now neither set of stories were making sense. They had hit a paradox, and because of that, logic, mathematics, and the very dimension of time was collapsing. And because time was falling apart, so was space. This perfect eternity was unraveling like a rope that had frayed too much. He stepped out of his office into the very fabric of the timelines of this world. He saw it coming apart. He pulled out his time cutter and suddenly fired an energy beam at the timeline. The timeline was condensed into a scroll containing the entire history of their world. He took it inside the base and looked it over. Crap. I gotta do some quick rewrites. He began to assume that the unforeseen variable of the connection between Naruto and Minato in a 4D space was the issue. They were carrying their own timeline within themselves through memories, and that was causing logical fallacies and inconsistencies. So he began rewriting things. I can fix this. I can fix this. The experiment isn't over yet. It's not over yet. Finishing the scroll, he tossed it back outside and blasted it with his time cutter, returning it to the timeline it once was. Since the story was too vague, he needed to write in a history for the two now so that the timeline could overcome this paradox. Feeling he'd succeeded, he sat back down in his chair and watched with intent. Minato, in the body of Naruto, was walking home from his sparring session with Obito and the others. He had been denied his treat, as this originally was the lesson he taught to Obito. It was his responsibility. As he walked, though, he was suddenly overcome with a deep, searing pain. He fell to his knees and gripped his head. Obito looked to him. Naruto, are you okay? Minato shook his head. It hurts so bad. It felt like he was losing himself. He felt like his soul was being ripped apart and replaced with something else. His memories, everything he had done was being destroyed. It's like the universe itself were falling apart. Nothing made sense, and he felt as though he was being thrown into an abyss of insanity. And as he cried out in pain, he raised his eyes up. Suddenly, he was in the Hokage's office. The pain was gone. How had he gotten there? Suddenly, memories he knew he had never experienced for himself began to appear as he stood up. Obito looked at him. Minato, are you all right? Minato nodded, and suddenly he realized it. Wait, what did you call me? Minato? Minato stood and looked into a mirror. He was still in Naruto's body, but now apparently his name was recognized as Minato. Looking back through his false memories, he came to realize that he had always been known as such, but that meant that... He looked over and saw himself sitting behind a desk. At the front of that desk was a nameplate that said Yondaime Hokage, Naruto Namikaze. Naruto? Minato asked. Naruto looked at his hands and then around. How did I get here? I have the same question, Minato said. Naruto looked at Obito, Sasuke, and Sakura and then spoke. I think me and Minato are gonna need a moment to speak. Sitting in his chair, Fu let out a sigh. Wowzers, that was almost really bad. Now I can see why Supreme Kai of Time hates it when I mess with stuff. All this authoring and the implementing of canon, making things non-canon, it's super hard. Continuity can be hard to keep, but I guess this is the issue you get with linear time travel. Timelines are the universe's way of saying frick you to paradoxes. Creating a timeline that doesn't do that is just asking for universal collapse. This isn't exactly what I had in mind, but to be honest, this might be an even cooler outcome. Now I know what happens to broken continuities inside of a linear timeline. That's gonna be useful information in the future. Normally, science is done without interference. An experiment whose outcome is interfered with is unreliable, but to be honest, I'm getting attached to these little guys. I want to see what kind of story they can tell together now. Fu proceeded to open a bag of gummy Namekians and continued to watch the story unfurl. Where would it go from here? Fu had his experiment on pause. He had decided to hit the gym for a while. All that popcorn and candy he'd been eating for the past few weeks had started to noticeably alter his physical health. Nothing beat a little workout to keep him in shape. All the while he worked, though, his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the Naruto world in which the souls of a father and son had switched. Despite the fact that his experiment was now trashed, with him having had to go into the timeline itself and alter things just to keep it stable, it had become a bit of a soap opera to him. He wasn't as much interested in this scientifically anymore. He was invested. The lore. Oh, that sweet, sweet lore. He had to know what came next. As he finished his workout, he made it back to his seat where he had waiting for him a salad and some water. Nothing like cleansing the system, but it's time to see where this story will take me. He clicked play on the remote and watched as the lives of those two continued. Minato stepped to the window and looked out as if he were afraid someone might be listening in from a distance. Naruto, being big in an adult's body, couldn't hide himself as he was in spirit. His legs were pressed together as his hands sat on his knees. He seemed slightly nervous as to what Minato was going to say. Minato looked back. What have you been doing? What do you mean? Naruto asked. Minato motioned around. This strange change of scenery. The fact that the fourth Hokage is called Naruto Namikaze. What have you been doing in the past? I've been doing my best, Naruto said. It's not easy doing this stuff. I thought you were killed, Minato said. And Kushina, what's happened to Kushina? Naruto looked down at the floor in shame. I couldn't protect her. Minato, despite being in the form of a child, had every bit the same intimidation factor as he had before. Couldn't protect her? What do you mean, she's dead? Naruto couldn't answer, leaving Minato's mind to fill in the blanks. Minato shook his head. She's really dead, he asked, hardly able to keep his emotions in check. He gripped Naruto by the collar. She was your responsibility. Where were you? Naruto pushed Minato back. Where were you? Minato stood there for a moment. His expression was confusion mixed with frustration. What? Naruto began to explain. You have no right to judge me. I tried my best and it wasn't good enough, but it was better than anything you did, Dad. Doesn't look like it, Minato said as he motioned around him. I had to live without parents for a while. I assumed you botched something up and got yourself killed. Naruto's face was growing red. You think that was something I did, he said? You think I'm without parents because of something I did. Naruto came out of his chair. He looked ready to fight to the point that Minato was getting into a defensive position. Naruto attempted to punch Minato, but Minato dodged the fist and pushed it away before retreating. You better get a hold of yourself, Naruto. I'd prefer not to have to kick your ass right now. Naruto turned around and threw a chair at Minato. Kick my ass? You couldn't if you tried. All the skills you had, now I have. My body's bigger and stronger too. Minato, still keeping his distance, raised an accusing finger and pointed it at Naruto. Just because you have my body doesn't mean you know how to use it. Naruto came over the desk and tackled Minato. The two rolled. Despite everything, Naruto had the weight advantage, so he ended up on top. Minato brought his hands into a defensive position to block any incoming attacks, and there were many of them. Naruto's fists flew through the air, striking bone and sinew with every full power strike. You know nothing, Naruto shouted. You think it was my failure that left you an orphan? No, it was yours. I'm alive right now because of what I did, growing up myself in my own body. I didn't even have that, and that was long before we switched bodies. Minato was shocked. Naruto was an orphan before he switched places with me? Minato then asked the question on his mind. Naruto, how did you become an orphan? Naruto pulled his fists back. Because you chose the leaf over me. Mom lost her nine tails and then you sacrificed your life to seal it into me. I was forced to live alone. Nobody would even talk to me because of what I was. They were so scared of me, they hated me. All because of the stupid nine tails. He punched Minato in the gut when he wasn't properly defending himself. His mind was working hard, trying to wrap around it. Naruto. It was at this point that Minato's arms just fell to the side. Naruto kept wailing on him and Minato just took it. Naruto pounded out his father's body, though technically it was his own, until he couldn't take it anymore, falling to tears, his head resting on Minato's chest. Minato's face was bruised and battered. His eyes nearly swollen shut, he watched Naruto cry upon his chest. Minato raised his arms up and wrapped them around Naruto's head. It's okay, he said. Let it all out. A few good minutes passed before Naruto caught hold of his faculties. He sat up and got off Minato before taking a seat in a chair. Minato, body agonizingly painful, sat up and began to walk to Naruto, where he put his hands on his shoulders. This is your first real time getting to meet me, isn't it? Naruto nodded silently. Minato shook his head. I suck at first impressions. He touched his head to Naruto's. Son, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have blamed you. I blame myself. I'm not certain what circumstances you've had to go through, but I'm proud of you. Whatever happened, I know my son did his best. You know how I know? Naruto looked up through his tears, questioningly. Minato kissed his head. Because my son is strong. If my son was living the life I was living at the start of this strange swap, then I know he was strong. I don't know why I had to choose the village over you, but you chose differently, and it seems that nothing bad has really happened. Nothing but the deaths of Kakashi and Kushina, and those might have happened anyway. Minato stroked his son's cheek as their heads continued to touch. I'm sorry I got mad at you, son. I'm sorry I accused you. I was just so distraught. Naruto wiped his eyes and pulled away. It's okay. You're human, and sometimes people forget that. I think you forget that too. Minato cocked his head and let off a little smile. Your mother used to say that to me. Naruto smiled as well. I know. Naruto would stand and take his father's hand. Together they would go towards the bathroom where Naruto would pull out the first aid kit. He'd begin the process of cleaning his wounds and applying medicine. I would ask how you learned to do this stuff, but I'm afraid what your answer would be. Naruto nodded. Once that was done, the two began to clean the room up. Naruto sat down at his desk again. Looking at how warped his father was from their brawl, Naruto began to wonder how he was going to explain this. Minato told him not to worry. He would explain it himself. He would then call the rest of Team 7 in. Obito would enter the room with Sakura and Sasuke. Looking over at Naruto, Obito double-took. Naruto-sensei, what happened here? Naruto would look away. Minato would look up. I tripped. Obito looked at Minato and then back at Naruto. Takes a bit more than a trip to get a shiner like that. Minato took a deep breath and sighed. Obito-sensei, with all due respect, this isn't exactly your business. This is between me and my father. Obito wanted to protest further about the injustice of any man striking his child. I know that there needs to be discipline and even a spanking or at most a pop on the lip, but this looks like roadkill. This isn't right, Naruto-sensei. As much as Obito loved his mentor, he wasn't afraid to point out when he thought something wasn't right. Minato looked up. Obito-sensei, I love you, but shut up. You don't understand the situation, let alone the reasons why I look like this. Trust me when I say that I'm fine. Obito looked at Naruto for a moment and then back over at Minato. If you feel like you're okay, then that's fine. I won't say anything or do anything, but just know that no matter what, Minato, you're my responsibility. More than a student, you're my friend. Anything you need me to do, I'll do. Minato nodded his head in acknowledgement. All right, what's the reason you're here? Naruto asked. Obito then spoke. You wanted to call us in for a mission you had set aside for us. Obito pointed toward a small wire basket where a mission was placed. Naruto picked it up and looked over it. Capture the Nine Tails. Minato's brow furrowed as he looked at his son. Capture the Nine Tails? Surely not. Naruto read it out. According to this, you're tasked with going and retrieving the Nine Tails. You'll be accompanied by a team of others who are good for sealing, but all the same, yeah, you're gonna be the one sent in as the spearhead. He handed it to Obito, but before Obito could take it, Minato intercepted. He began to read it through. Impossible. This isn't how Konoha operates. From his seat, Fu's eyes cut left and right. Well, maybe not, but I gotta make a plot happen, right? I wanna throw in some struggle. Obito took the file from Minato and looked it over. Seems right to me. Minato looked up. Obito-sensei, you can't be serious. This is a mission for Chunin at the least, not Genin. Suddenly, Minato noticed that he was wearing a flak jacket. Fu was capping his pen as Minato spoke. Minato looked back at Naruto. Have I always been wearing this, he asked. Naruto looked. I never really noticed it before, but my memories are telling me you have? Minato sighed. Someone's conspiring against us. At this point, he was beginning to question how much of his memories were true, and who or what could be doing this. It was as if they were under some sort of grand genjutsu, but obviously they weren't. As he looked down at his jacket again, he began to wonder what kind of ninjutsu this was. Someone with a power not unlike Izanagi? But it had to be so grand that it affected the world on a 4D scale. I don't know who's doing this, but I'm going to find you, Minato said as he looked up. Whether it was on purpose or by accident, maybe fate or whatever, Minato happened to look straight into Fu's viewpoint, making it seem like he was staring straight at Fu. Fu accidentally dropped his water, having been unexpectedly intimidated by him. Wow, that was creepy, but I guess you have to be sharp to basically be the king of all ninjas. But then again, is it a good idea to threaten the man who holds your very fate in his hands? I can rewrite your story to do whatever I want, Fu said, as if Minato could hear him. Of course, Minato couldn't, but that didn't stop Fu from getting into an argument with him. Naruto watched as the group left. He sat down at his desk and began to concentrate. Something was wrong indeed. But what could be the cause, and how could they fix it? Minato and Team 7 were sent out along with a group of Tokujo ninja who specialized in sealing. According to the mission, Minato was designated to become the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, which would be reminiscent of how things had originally gone. But who was controlling them, and why? That was what was on Minato's mind right now. While he was nervous about Sakura and Sasuke, Minato was confident in his abilities. While he was in a new body that might have been slightly weaker compared to his original one, it was also true that he retained all of his experience and technical knowledge of battle. If anything, his smaller size might help him further increase his speed and even allow him to transcend what he could do before. As they continued off to the new location, they would hear a roar in the distance. Drawing close was dangerous. It was common knowledge that the Nine Tails, though most commonly known as a brute, was also the most capable sensory type among the tailed beasts, which meant that the closer they got to it, the higher the chance that it would discover their location. That is, if it didn't already know it. They kept their earpieces on. The forest was massive. Despite that, it seemed so small by comparison of the Nine Tails. Standing within the foliage of a high tree, Minato could see the Nine Tails looming in the distance like a mountain, sitting above the open plains. It was awe-inspiring to see something so truly large. He'd never witnessed the Nine Tails in its full size before. It must have only recently regenerated after what had happened to it years prior, according to what Naruto had said to him. Minato wasn't sure why it hadn't regenerated in 12 years when 3 years seemed to be what was most common. He chalked it up to another change in timeline. As they drew closer, silently, they found the area where it had seemingly regenerated. It was a large crater. It looked like an atomic weapon had exploded here. As they looked around, Obito pointed them forward, getting them closer. As they drew in, they saw its feral nature as it sniffed around for them. It immediately turned to look at them with its massive blood-red eyes. The very expulsion of its breath seemed to blow the trees back, threatening to send any without strong chakra control flying. Sakura and Sasuke were both sent flying back, with Sakura being caught by Minato and Sasuke by Obito. Pulling them back to the tree, they were then assailed by the bark of the Ninetales, a sound so loud that those closest to it began to bleed from their ears. Minato covered his ears when this happened, attempting to limit the damage, but his ears were bleeding too. He heard a ringing sound as they ached in his head, but he had no time to deal with this. Turning back, he began to speak into the earpiece, only to realize that nobody could understand what he was saying, and that their responses were also too muffled for Minato to understand. "You clever fox! You disrupted our communications!" The beast almost seemed to smile at Minato's words. It then clawed at the forest, shredding trees in two. Minato jumped up and over the claw as Obito utilized his Kamui to turn himself, Sakura, and Sasuke intangible. Making sure his team was okay, he let them go and joined in on the battle. The Ninetales swung its claw at Obito, but Obito utilized his Kamui to jump through the hand and began running up the beast's arm. Minato and Obito, on separate arms, ran up the Ninetales. Minato threw kunai and left marks on the beast's body as he did so. The Ninetales shook viciously, trying to get them off, but it didn't help. Sasuke was helping Sakura up, and the two of them, along with the Tokujo, were watching in awe of Obito and Minato's abilities. The Tokujo began to form a circle around Kurama, utilizing techniques taught by the Uzumaki, many of which the Tokujo shinobi were descended from. They shot chains out to try and grip Kurama, and those who weren't using chains utilized the Shadow Possession Jutsu. Yes, many here were Nara clan as well. Despite this, Kurama was still not locked down and continued to rage against his bonds. "Not again! Never again!" it spoke, its voice booming over the ranges. As its hand tried to throw Minato off, Minato jumped up to avoid it before using the Flying Raijin Jutsu to teleport to Obito. Obito continued to run, this time taking Minato's hand. Kurama tried to crush them with the palm of his hand, only for Obito to phase through it. Once they were safe, Obito would throw Minato toward the face of Kurama, where he would latch onto the nose. As this happened, Kurama began to struggle against Minato, stumbling back. Obito would jump from the arm and phase through the beast's chest before turning tangible again, displacing any of the organs that were supposed to be where he appeared. Kurama howled in pain, rising up on his hind legs. Minato jumped forward and put a kunai into Kurama's eye, causing the beast to let out a cry of pain. Within, Obito was weaving hand signs. He began to utilize fire-style jutsu from within to cause as much pain and damage as possible. The Ninetales fell back. Smoke almost seemed to exit out its nostrils and mouth as it let out howls of pain. Sakura was so shocked by the brutality of this battle that she puked. "They're killing it," she managed to say. Sasuke shook his head. "No, it's a tailed beast. It can take insane amounts of punishment. It can regenerate. This strategy is to keep it from regenerating for as long as possible." Sasuke could see the strategy. He had studied these beasts before, or at least Fu had written in that he had. Kurama, now with only one good eye and the nastiest case of heartburn imaginable, rolled back over and rose to its forepaws again, growling. It then began to cough violently, drawing Obito out with it. Kurama then took a deep breath of air, increasing the potency of the flames in its lungs. The pain hurt, but it also gave it an even stronger weapon. He began to exhale the flame. As the flames passed through its mouth, it would be further enhanced with chakra, causing the blast of flames to be increased, engulfing what appeared to be the whole forest even. Obito managed to escape the blast with his Kamui, warping to another dimension. As he stood in that dimension for a moment, he took a deep breath and checked his bleeding eye. "This constant use of Kamui is gonna ruin my Mangekyo," he said. He then noticed how bad he smelled. "I'm definitely gonna need a shower when I get home." He would then teleport back. As soon as he did, the pure heat of the air around him was almost enough to cause him to pass out. The beast looked down at Obito with rage before forming a tailed beast ball that would destroy him and the entire surrounding area. Minato saw this coming and entered Sage mode. He then formed a Sage Art Big Ball Rasengan to drop down upon its head. Doing so, he caused the beast to accidentally close its mouth on its own tailed beast ball. This resulted in the ball exploding in its mouth, which disoriented it. The Rasengan to the head multiplied that force quite a bit, jostling the beast's brain. The beast, having lost consciousness, fell to its side. Minato and Obito stood there. "Begin sealing it away," Minato shouted. The surviving Tokujo began to use their chains and their shadow paralysis jutsu to pull it toward Minato. As the process began, the seal began to form on Minato as its chakra was pulled in. However, as this occurred, they were surprised to find that they were not the only ones seeking. A man in a swirling mask with white hair appeared and cut through the chains. The process of sealing crawled to a halt. Minato and Obito looked at the man. The man turned around. "I think I'll be taking this beast for myself. Thank you for subduing it for me." Obito rushed in to strike the guy. As he did, the man's Sharingan awakened into a Rinnegan and caused Obito to phase right through him. Obito was shocked by this turn of events. Suddenly, the man pulled a katana and rammed it straight through Obito's back. Minato cried out, "Obito!" He ran at the man, attempting to strike him as well, only for the same thing to happen to him. However, before the masked man could stab Minato, Minato would utilize his flying Raijin to teleport away. Then, as the masked man looked around for him, Minato kept teleporting. He was teleporting from marker to marker, so the man began to pay close attention to where all the kunai were. That was until Minato appeared from a marker that was placed on Obito and managed to get a strike in on the man. The man would stumble back and seemingly teleport away. Minato would look around and notice him standing on the Nine Tails. "Excuse me, but I don't have much time to play. I have a tailed beast to take. Ciao." Suddenly, he, along with the entire beast, were teleported to a different location. Minato ran to Obito and held him up. "Obito, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine." Obito coughed up blood. Minato took his jacket off and stuffed it into the wound. "Medic!" Obito was rushed to the hospital along with the rest of those who were hurt. He was immediately taken into surgery. Minato stood outside and waited. He thought back on all the good times he and Obito had together and worried that this was going to be the last of them. Naruto appeared in the hospital too. "I heard Obito's hurt. Is he gonna be okay?" Naruto asked. Minato sighed. "I don't know. He's in surgery now." It wasn't much longer until Rin appeared. Minato looked down the hall at her. She was tearfully asking questions to the nurses, her hands clasped in what appeared to be an eternal prayer for her husband. Minato looked down. Naruto walked over. "Rin, are you okay?" She shook her head. "Not unless Obito is." Naruto looked back. "He'll be okay, I promise." She broke down into tears and began to cry into his chest. Naruto hugged her and then looked back at Minato, who stood there, hands in his pockets, before looking away. Naruto would eventually come to Minato and ask him more about it. Minato would inform Naruto that the man who took the beast was the same masked man as before, the same one who had attacked Naruto. Naruto was stunned. "He's still at it?" Minato nodded. "He's powerful. He appears to possess a Rinnegan, one that allows him to do all the same things that Obito does. He took the Nine Tails, which is the same thing he tried to do when you were born, except this time it worked." Naruto thought about it. What does a Rinnegan user want with a tailed beast? Minato shook his head. "I don't know, but nothing good." Minato looked up at Naruto. "How many of my techniques have you learned based on muscle memory?" Naruto thought about it. "Well, I figured out flying Raijin very quickly, but besides your taijutsu, that's about it." Minato nods. "Then we're gonna need to get you used to these techniques and learn to use them all yourself. I feel like something's brewing, and we need to prepare." As it turns out, Obito would survive, but he'd be left in the hospital for quite some time, with Rin refusing to go anywhere away from him. Minato would take Naruto out. "I'm going to teach you how to use the techniques you should already know how to use. You've got flying Raijin down. That's a true feat. It's complicated and requires control and precision. If you can learn that alone based on muscle memory, then I think you could learn anything. So what I want you to do is this." Minato held out his hand and formed a Rasengan. "Now, your turn." Naruto held out his hand and began trying to make one as well, but it kept exploding in his face. For days he tried to perfect it, but every time he thought he was getting close, it would simply explode. Minato thought about it, and he realized his mistake. "All right, Naruto, I want you to try something different." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Minato then spoke. "Don't try to make it anymore. Just make it." "I'm confused," Naruto said, and rightly so. Minato explained. "I'm trying to teach you from muscle memory, but with your mind getting in the way, you keep messing up. Think of it like this. Have you ever noticed it's hard to sneeze when someone tells you God bless you early? Like, I used to do this thing to Kushina, and she hated me for it. I would wait as she began building up a sneeze and then tell her bless you before she even sneezed, and it would make her unable to sneeze as much as she wanted. Her mind got in the way since it recognized that phrase I used is generally only used after one has sneezed, and it tricked her mind into thinking she had already sneezed. That's similar to what's going on here. Your mind is overpowering your body. Because you're now trying to sneeze, or in this case, make a Rasengan, you can't. But just like how when you feel a sneeze coming, if you look up into a light source, you can help it along, you should instead focus on what you want the ball to look like." Minato displayed a Rasengan for Naruto. Naruto looked at it and nodded his head. "All right." He closed his eyes and began attempting to form the ball based on a visualization. As he did it, he found that before he even knew it, he had formed a Rasengan. "I did it!" he shouted as he looked into his hands. Minato then spoke. "Commit this feeling to memory and refer to it any time you want to make a Rasengan." From there, Minato began also teaching him Sage Mode, helping him remember how to take in the proper amount of Sage Chakra. Minato's body was less accustomed to this technique, only using it rarely, but he did know how to properly balance it, and his body should remember that at least. Naruto continued to do this. Eventually, he managed to complete this as well. Over the course of a month or so, they continued to practice this technique. Returning to Konoha proper, they would visit Obito, who had been let out of the hospital quite some time ago. He'd been resting at his house and was now currently trying to get back into shape. But as it turned out, since they'd been gone, Konoha wasn't the only one to lose one of their tailed beasts. It seemed that every nation had lost some, and how many they lost was unknown. They wouldn't confirm or deny, but some of the spies indicated that they had lost all of them. This meant that there was only one tailed beast in the world that hadn't been brought under this man's control. This was when Naruto realized it. He hit the intercom button. "I need an Anbu escort to head to Rin Nohara's house and bring her here. This is an emergency." But just as he finished that phrase, there was a giant explosion in the village. Minato and Naruto looked outside to see a statue. They ran out to see that the man wearing the mask was there. As they spoke, he was holding Rin in his arms. She was unconscious. "Rin!" Naruto called. He ran toward the man, only for the man to hold out his hand and throw Naruto back. Rin floated before the statue as she was covered in a red bubbling chakra. A certain crimson fog seemed to exit from her mouth, nose, and eyes. It traveled into the statue. The man then put his hand on the statue and transferred some energy over from the Nine Tails. This caused the statue to awaken into a strange creature. "Dad, what is that?" Naruto asked. Minato shook his head. "I have no earthly clue." The masked man turned around to face Minato and Naruto. He raised his finger. The man would then absorb this new creature. He let out a cry of pain as he held his head, then a shout of determination. Slowly, his entire body was covered in scales as he turned around. Removing the mask, he revealed himself. Naruto felt his blood run cold. "Kakashi?" Minato was shocked. "Kakashi, why would you do this?" Kakashi then spoke. "I came to realize something a long time ago. My father was a loser. We're all losers in some fashion. Whether we follow the rules or shirk them, in the end we always become a loser and people blame us for that. We lose our honor and our lives, and then everyone forgets about us. Nobody remembers the good we did. They only remember the single mistake. Well, I seek to free people from that cycle, and with the power of the Ten Tails, I have the capability of ensuring that nobody ever has to commit harakiri again for doing what they think is right." "So what? Are you just gonna take over the world and destroy the concept of honor?" Naruto asked. Kakashi shook his head. "No, I'm going to cast the Infinite Tsukiyomi, a genjutsu, to create a world for everyone. A world so that no one is ever forced to break their own personal rules again." "I can't let you do that, Kakashi," Minato said. "I dare you to stop me." And so the three rushed into battle against each other. Minato and Naruto would strike out at Kakashi, only to find out how frivolous their attacks were. They weren't strong enough to get through. Minato and Naruto realized that they would need extra oomph if they wanted to break through his defense. They would activate their Sage Mode, rushing in, striking out at Kakashi. With their Senjutsu, they came to realize that Kakashi couldn't stop their attacks with his truth-seeking orbs. But even so, the longer they fought, the more they came to realize that they were simply not in the same class as Kakashi. Minato was knocked back. As he was, Kakashi formed a chakra rod that he threw at Minato like a spear. Naruto would jump out at it and intercept the spear with his body before it could strike Minato. Minato would catch Naruto. "No!" he shouted. Naruto laid there, bleeding out as Minato held him. Naruto chuckled. "It's funny. I was supposed to die putting the Nine Tails into you, but Kushina told me no. And now I'm dying for you anyway. Isn't that ironic?" He chuckled a bit more before coughing up blood. As Minato sat there holding Naruto, he looked up at Kakashi. There was no way he could do this alone. It just wasn't feasible. Whoever had written out their fate to go like this wanted them to lose, it seemed. And they were going to get their wish. But as Kakashi drew closer, Minato closed his eyes to prepare for the end. As he did so, he felt an unusual presence. He opened his eyes to see a strange man coated in a black cloth standing before him. It was hard to tell who or even what it was, but whatever it was, Minato knew it wasn't human. The being looked around. This was not what was supposed to happen. This was never a possibility. Minato looked up at the man. "Who are you?" The man looked back. "None of your business." He then held out his hand, and it seemed that the entire universe stopped moving. It was dead silent. So silent, it was almost deafening. With a swipe of his hand, events began to flow backwards at an incomprehensible speed. Minato and Naruto felt as if their false memories were being removed, and their true memories were being returned. The being looked back at them. He then waved his hands about. Suddenly, the soul of Naruto was pulled from Minato's body, and the soul of Minato was pulled from Naruto's body. The two souls would then go into their own respective bodies. "Someone's messing with time," that being said, "and I don't like it." With a bright flash, everything returned. Minato was standing in front of Kushina again as she was talking to him about their baby, informing him of Naruto's conception. Minato looked around. What happened? This was the same thing Fu was asking. What in the world happened? Everything got rewinded. He stood and looked at the monitor more closely, only to realize that Minato was back where he'd begun. He then switched to Naruto's monitor only to find that Naruto was sleeping in bed again. But outside of his window was a strange man who wore black. His head bore horns in the shape of a crown with 3 eyes. As Fu looked closer, he noticed the being look back at him. Fu would fall back in his chair, grab his remote, and turn the television off. As he sat there in silence, he let out a sigh. What the heck is that? That felt nowhere near the same power as the rest of that world. What in the world did I attract, he wondered. He began to wonder if what he had encountered was perhaps the supreme Kai of time of this universe, or perhaps something similar. That was when he heard it. Something stepping behind him. Fu gulped and turned around and looked to see the being who had previously been on the monitor now standing in the shadows of his laboratory, just breathing, watching. Fu stood slowly. Who are you? I am the man who will kill you, he said. Fu slowly reached behind him to grab his time cutter. Is that right? The man stepped forward into the light. Who are you? I at least deserve to know the name of the man who kills me, right? Fu asked with a slight smirk. The man then spoke. I am Shibai Otsutsuki, the Otsutsuki god. Fu then spoke. I take it that you're the guardian of this realm, Shibai. Shibai scoffed. No, I am no guardian. What happens to these people is of no consequence to me. Then what's your goal in this? Why stop my experiment? Shibai slowly began to walk forward. Your experiment was altering the flow of space, time, and fate. Loathsome as it is for me to say, that includes my own fate. While I may have ascended to the higher dimensions, my past remains tethered to me. Your altering of history threatens to alter my present. I cannot allow you to mess with time to the point that I am no longer existent. And so, as I stand before you now, I have come to claim your life before you can alter things further. Fu activates his super form and reveals his time cutter. Nice try, but I've fought against plenty of gods. Some self-proclaimed deity'll be nothing. Racing forwards, he attempts to strike Shibai, only for Shibai to grab the blade midair and snap it. Fu's shocked. This being's power level must have been through the roof. He began to smile and laugh. You're just the coolest, aren't ya? Fu gets punched in the nose, sent flying back into his chair. Raising his hand to grip his nose, he feels as though it were broken, blood dripping from it. He looks up, wondering how he could get out of this one. This being was strong, and it was capable of altering the 4th dimension in real time. That was dangerous. As Fu stood, he began to step back, grabbing a spare time cutter from a cabinet. Fu began running the math through his head. He smiled. He opened the door to his office and stepped out into the space between timelines. Shibai followed him. You've made a mistake, Fu said. You may be strong and capable of altering time any way you want, but your greatest mistake was coming to a place between times. You can't rewind what doesn't exist. He then pulls out his time cutter and turns the timeline into a scroll again. Shibai watches this. Thank you for telling me that you're tethered to your timeline. I suppose all I really have to do to destroy you, seeing as though you come from a timeline I created, is this. Fu opens the scroll and quickly searches for any reference to the name Shibai Otsutsuki. Shibai rushes at Fu, but before he can do anything, Fu writes his name out of the timeline, stating that instead of ascending to the next dimension, he failed, causing Shibai to die for good. As he did that, Shibai ceased to exist before him. But as he did, leaving Fu alone, Fu returned to his console. Sitting down, he began to dab the blood from his nostrils. Wowzers! Who would have thunk it? Such a powerful guy in a world where ki doesn't even exist like it does here. Looking at the monitor, he sees Minato celebrating with Kushina about the baby they were going to have. Fu then sees Naruto sleeping in his bed and smiles. Maybe I can let this timeline continue down its proper course. Except, he goes back into the scroll and strikes out Obito being crushed by a rock, strikes out Madara's interference, and strikes out Black Zetsu as well. Consider it a parting gift for all the good stuff you did for me. He sits there as Naruto wakes up surrounded by his family. A rather happy ending if I do say so, but experiments are an important thing, so it's time to start a new one, he said. Choosing another timeline, he opens a tab. This one says experiment number 3, Sasuke Rebirth on it. Fu smiles. Now, let's see what would happen if that Sasuke guy were reborn and maintained all of his memories and abilities, shall we? I can't tell you how much I enjoyed making this one. Introducing a sort of meta plot that unites all these different stories together I think makes it even more interesting, but I want to know what you think about it. Where do you think this plot should go? Should it continue? Would you like to see this become a thing in the future? Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, be sure to click that like button to tell YouTube about it. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when other videos like this drop, and speaking of videos, here's some others to check out if you're still hungry for more. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching, and peace out.